Happy Thursday. I'm so excited to talk to this author. I've had him on, I think this is our fourth time. He'll have to let me know. But he is so much fun. It's like bow ties, books, and bourbon is kind of his three-thing tagline. So hello, welcome.
There's my girl. How you doing?
Good. How are you? You get
I
right
am
on started.
good. It has been a while, and I tell you, is it just me, or have you gotten even more enchanting since the last time we've talked?
Okay. Thank you. I wish.
I was right. I was right.
Well, welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Mara, and I have with me RomCom and contemporary romance author Ivan Scott. Welcome, Ivan. I think this is like our fourth time.
Is it? Boy, I tell you, yeah. And each time has been, just even better. And I got your message about 1 hour only on Instagram, and it's like, Gigi, we're gonna have to do a two-parter or a three-parter as much as we get talking.
I know. I don't know why they've like kind of limited it down, and I'm just like, what is happening? So
Hmm.
we have to talk fast.
Yes. Yes, we do. Well, at least I got the request part right. Because the last couple of times it's like I've screwed it up and I've got there like 8:05, 8:10 and all that. So I'm making progress.
Hey, the fourth chime is a charm. Okay, so welcome back. Since we last talked, I looked it up. I think it was like June of last year. And then
Hmm.
you've since published another Redhead theme book. So please start with the Redhead theme for those that are dialing in and listening, where that came from, because I love that story.
Okay. Well, it comes from my wife, who her name is Kim, but I call her Red. That's her nickname. And she's kind of my muse in my books. A lot of the stuff that she does, a lot of the stories, a lot of the anecdotes, some of the quirky things that she does, or some of the silly things that we get into. I take those and I put them in the books, and it makes my job a lot easier because I don't have to create on the fly. I can just say, you know what, I'm gonna write about what happened last week, and it's gonna be really, really good. So I think that's where it comes from. So yeah.
Okay, we're all jealous that you're basically living with your muse.
Yeah. Well, though, Gigi, it's not all it's cracked up to be. When I don't do the laundry correctly, or if I don't take out the garbage or whatever, I'm just like, maybe in my next book I can kill her off. But so it has its ups and downs.
That's the marriage side. That's not the book author side.
No, it's not. It's not. That's the marriage side. That's like the personal side, not the professional side.
Exactly. Okay, so you published another book. I think it came out, what, October 24th?
Uh-huh. It came out in October, so it's the Redhead and the Fountain Pen. So that's the cover. So yeah.
Okay, tell us about it because I know it's a series of letters. I was reading some of them. Super sweet. Tell us where the idea came from.
Well, I got to thinking because it's like with our kids, and I work at Georgia Tech on college campus, and so I see kids on their cell phones all the time, looking at reels and looking at social media. It seems like 24/7. So I got to thinking, what would it be like to fall in love with somebody, not by an Instagram profile or a Facebook post or whatever, but just by the, their letters. And that's another thing that intrigued me about this is that the lost art of writing letters. It's like we don't write letters anymore. We write emails, or we put it in messages, and it's all in text, and it's all. So I got to thinking, what would it be like to fall in love with somebody just by holding the paper in your hands, seeing their handwriting, and knowing that their hands touched this, their thoughts went into this, their hearts went into this letter. So what happens is it starts off with a high school softball coach in Atlanta, and his name is Mark Dawson, and he gets into a bit of a controversy. It's not anything that he's done, but I just say there's some shady dealings behind the scenes that force him to leave Atlanta through his school. The school athletic director is not really cool on the idea of a girls softball team or girls sports in general. And since Mark has been very successful, they've won all these state championships. They're kind of like the toast of the school. The athletic director doesn't like it, and so there's a big stink, and so he's forced to leave Atlanta. And you'll read why in the book. There's more to it, but read right in the book. So he wants to get away from Atlanta, and it just so happens that there's a small town in Georgia who's looking for a softball coach. Their softball team has been just miserable. They've only won a few games over the last like three to 5 years, and so they need a savior. So Mark decides he's going to do it. Mm-hmm. So while he's getting acquainted with his new hometown, it's Blue Ridge, Georgia, very small town in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Georgia. He goes into a bookstore, and it's a used bookstore, and his favorite book is The Great Gatsby. So he's like, well, it's a used bookstore. They got to have a copy of The Great Gatsby. So sure enough, he finds it. And as he's thumbing through it, a letter falls out. And so he's like, well, this is, what is this? Well, somebody must have left a letter in because it's a used bookstore. So he figures, hey, somebody probably just sold the book and didn't even think about it. So he takes the book home and doesn't really think much about it. And then as he's reading it, the letter falls out again. So it's like, okay, something's going on here. Somebody wants me to read this letter, find out what's going on with this letter. So he opens it up, and it's from a girl in New York, and her name is Catherine, and it's a breakup letter. And basically in the letter, she's saying to the ex-boyfriend, whose name is Jacob, you never supported me in my career. I want to play for the New York Philharmonic. That's my dream. And you just, crapped on me every chance you got and told me I was a silly dreamer and I would never make it. And so I've decided just to end this right now. And I'm moving to Manhattan. She's in Brooklyn at the time. I'm going to move to Manhattan and I'm going to chase my dream. And I don't care if I ever see you ever again. So Mark is reading this letter and he's thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. This is, somebody that has this, like, this passion, this dream. And the person that's supposed to,
John letter too.
It is, or you could call it a Dear Jill letter if you want to, since it's coming from Catherine. So this, yeah. So I figured you'd like that. So Mark is just like, I don't know. I just started this new job. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I should write her. So the ghost of F. Scott Fitzgerald comes to visit him. And so it's like, oh my God, you're here and all that. They end up becoming friends throughout the book. And so basically he's saying, you got nothing to lose. Find out what's going on with this girl. Why don't you write her back? I can help you. I used to be a pretty good writer myself. So Mark is just like, okay, I'm going to write her. So he writes her a letter and says, okay, I read about what happened and I'm sorry. That I don't want to be intrusive or anything like that. But I just want to let you know that I'm here. If you ever want to talk or if I can help you or anything, just let me know. About a week later, he gets a letter back from her. And basically the letter says, I appreciate your words, but this was a really bad time in my life, and I prefer if you just leave me alone and stay out of my business. Thank you. And then she signs her name, Catherine. He's like, ooh, that went real well. So he's thinking, okay, all right, whatever. So he's, okay, I'm off the hook on this one. Don't have to worry about it. So about another week later, another letter comes, and it's from Catherine, and she says, Mark, I'm really sorry. It was just a bad time, and once I had a chance to get a little perspective, I read your letter for what it was, a friend to kind of help me through a tough time. And if you would like to be pen pals and, correspond this way, I would be more open to that. And so Mark is just like overjoyed. He's kind of got a feeling about this girl. But once he gets the letter, he's like, okay, my intuition was right. I can kind of see, this would be a good friendship. So he writes her back, and both of them are not big into social media. Mark doesn't have any social media accounts, neither does Catherine. And so he's like, would it be okay if we just corresponded through our letters? And so she's like, oh, that's great. This is what I want to do. So they trade letters back and forth. And as they do, their relationship kind of progresses. And they realize they have a lot in common and a lot of things that that Catherine likes. It's like she finds in Mark and the same Mark finds in Catherine. And Mark tells her all about the softball team he's coaching. And what's ironic is that the softball team that he's coaching them, because they're really bad, and they start to become good. And so he's trying to build up their confidence and all that. But the dual thing here is that he's doing the same thing for Catherine, because both the softball team and Catherine are putting everything they have into the things that they want. The softball team wants to be a winner. They want to win the state championship. Catherine wants to make the Philharmonic. So he's like coaching both at the same time. So it's really kind of cool to read all the inspirational quotes that he gives her, and he tells her nonstop, I believe in you, don't worry about it, you got this, and all that. So they really kind of build their friendship that way, and then it kind of escalates from there, because you have to have a friendship to build on for it to go a little further. So they have this nice little thing going on. So fast forward, Catherine does not she goes to audition, she doesn't make it. She gets turned down, and
No.
so it's just traumatic. And Mark feels terrible about it, and so he gets a letter from her, and she says, "Mark, I'm really sorry I didn't make it. You spent all your time coaching me up, and I've disappointed you, just like I disappointed my last boyfriend. And I think it's just best that we don't correspond anymore, because I don't want you to think I'm a loser and I've failed you and all this. And so this is our last letter. I'm moving to Iceland because a friend of mine offered me a position with the Iceland Philharmonic Orchestra." So she's like saying no more letters, and I'm like leaving the country. So bye, I'm out of here. So Mark is just like devastated, doesn't know what to do. He's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to let her go. But the problem is that the book, remember the book that he finds in the used bookstore?
Yes.
It's Catherine's book, okay? And that's why the letter was in there. And it turns out it was Catherine's father's book, and he gave it to Catherine. And she left it at Jacob's house, and Jacob took it and sold it to a used bookstore, and then it came down into the used bookstore where Mark found it. So Mark is like, well, she just ended it. I don't know what, it's bye. It's just goodbye. I can't do this anymore. Then he sees the book, and he's like, I promised that one day I would give it back to her. So no matter how badly she's broken my heart, or no matter how badly this thing has gone between us, I at least have to give the book back to her. So
Definitely.
He gets on a plane and goes to Iceland to find her. Crazy, right?
Very crazy.
Yes. So he's got the book, and it's around Christmas time, so he wraps it up kind of as a Christmas present. And so when he gets to Iceland, believe it or not, it's in late December. There's a snowstorm, so all the roads are blocked and all that. He ends up having to find transportation to get and I always pronounce this. Reykjavik is the capital of Iceland. The airport is 45 minutes outside of the capital, so he's got to figure out a way to get there. So he can't get a car, he can't get an Uber, can't get anything. So he finds somebody that runs a dog sled company, and his name is Olaf. And so Olaf straps him in the dog sled, and they take off through the snow to find Catherine. So long story short, they end up meeting, and he sees Catherine, and he gives her the present. And actually, I have a passage from the book that I was going to read just to kind of give you an idea of all that. So, but yeah, so they meet in Iceland, and I don't know, I guess maybe I should end it there, because I don't want to give too much more away. So, but that's where we are.
Okay, 2 questions. Yes, I want you to read the excerpt, but let's do that first, and then I want to ask you where in the world this idea came from, because it is so good.
Okay, all right. So let me set the scene for you. So what happens is that they stop at a chalet, and to refuel, like give the dogs their kind of like a snack and stuff, and kind of let them rest a little bit. So inside the chalet, the Iceland Philharmonic Orchestra has just a small group, and they're playing Christmas music. And so it just turns out, lo and behold, Catherine is in there. So he goes up, and he's like, by chance, it's the Iceland Philharmonic Orchestra. Does anybody know a Catherine Jensen? And one of the ladies says, oh, I'm not Catherine, but wait a minute, Catherine, somebody's here to see you. And that's how they meet. And so it's like, for the first time, he gets to see her, and he's just mesmerized. He's just like, oh my God, she is just, because when you have an idea about somebody, or when you think about somebody, but it's like you kind of have an idea in your mind what they look like. And he knows she's a redhead, and he knows that she has freckles and all that. But he gets to see her for the first time, and her eyes just look into his soul. He's just like, oh my God, this is the girl I've been corresponding with all these months. Reality is so much better than the dream. So he's just, but the problem is that this breaks his heart even more, because it's like, okay, I'm already in love with this girl, but she's not mine. She doesn't want me. So here's the excerpt from it. So he is standing in front of her, and he's got the book in his hands, and it's wrapped up like a Christmas present. So he says, I know it's not Christmas yet, but, and it's written in first person. I know it's not Christmas yet, but, I said as my words trailed off. Finally, I told her, actually, that's not a Christmas present. She took the package from my hand, looked it over, then pulled the ribbon out of its bow. She unwrapped it, and when she saw it was her book, she gasped, then covered her mouth. Tears formed in her eyes, and she held the book to her chest. My God, you remembered. My eyebrows rose. Yes, I did. I thought I'd never see it again. Well, they say Christmas is a time for miracles. I gave her a half-hearted smile and added, I didn't want to be the last guy, so I wanted to make sure your father's book got back to you. Catherine looked at the book, then at me. Thank you for doing this, Mark. She got quiet and looked at the floor. An uneasy silence hovered over us. That was my cue. She had her music, and finally she had her book. There was nothing else. There was nothing more she needed from me. Now it was my time to leave her alone. The game was over. I lost to an all-powerful foe who didn't walk, talk, or write beautiful words. I lost to a passion, and that's a game you can never win, ever. When there's passion, nothing can change what lies in the heart. I felt foolish for even trying. Well, that's the reason I came here. I wish you the best with your career. I'm sure the Iceland Symphony Orchestra has the best viola player in the world now. Congratulations, Catherine. One day you will change the world with your music. Catherine continued looking at the floor, then her eyes found mine. Thank you for the words. How long are you in town for? I'm going back to the airport now. I have a late flight back to Atlanta. Her face gave nothing away as she stared at me. I gave her a questionable smile. Well, I better get going. God bless you, Catherine. Merry Christmas. I nodded and then walked away. As I walked, I didn't hear her say stop or my name, so I continued walking till I reached the door. After pushing it open and received a frosty rush of air greeting me, I continued down the stairs. Funny, I didn't button my coat or put my hands in my pockets. I was too numb to feel anything. Mm-hmm. The landscape greeted me in complete darkness. The azure sky was now navy, with blinking lights hovering over everything. I smelled the fireplace and heard the crunching of snow under my feet. Funny the things you notice when you want to forget the previous few minutes of your life. As I stepped down the icy stairs, a razor wind caught me flush in the face. The numbness intensified, but there was nothing the outside could throw at me that was colder than my frozen days I had become. I was a dead man walking. I found Olaf checking the harnesses of a few of the dogs, so I approached. Change of plans. Take me back to the airport. Olaf gave me a confused stare. The airport? What about Reykjavik? And your dream girl? I looked over his wide shoulders to the mountains in the distance. She'll have to remain a dream. Olaf rubbed his frozen whiskers with a thick leather glove. As he rubbed, some of the icicles dropped from his beard. He gave me a sad stare, then nodded. Well, you must know what you're doing. Give me a minute while I check the harnesses. I'll have you back at the airport in no time. Before you know it, you'll be home. As another gust of wind slapped me in the face, thoughts of home never looked so good. While I waited, I looked down at one of the dogs. It looked up at me, its tail wagging. I crouched down and took its thick neck in my hands and rubbed it. Then I moved my hands up and rubbed the back of his ears. The dog's eyes were slits and its tongue popped in and out of its mouth. When he growled in spurts, letting me know I was hitting all the right spots, I knew I'd made a friend. After a few more rubs and growls, the eyes opened and it looked to the side. Its tail fluttered back and forth as someone approached. At this rate, its tail could clear a path for the people walking up the snowy sidewalk. I guess it wanted someone else and didn't need me any longer. Funny how that recurring theme keeps popping up wherever I had the misfortune of going. The dog moved its snout into the leg of someone standing next to me, so I stopped rubbing and looked up. This is a sweet dog. Yes, I'm sure it is, the familiar voice replied. So, there you go.
That is so awesome. I love that scene. It's just so, I like how you write in short sentences. We talked about that before. I think you said it's the Hemingway way.
Yeah. I wish I was I wish I was a tenth as good as he was. So I'm trying as little as I can, just little bits here and there. But yeah, so the short kind of punchy sentences. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
But they're still so heartfelt and still filled with so much emotion.
Yeah, it was, and it's funny because when I was writing it, and you probably get this way too, and I know probably the people that are watching the podcast that write, sometimes when you write something, it's like you can feel yourself tearing up, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm onto something good, because even I can't even get through this without, getting a little emotional. So yeah.
And you have a couple of fans on here. You have Elaine is on.
Uh-huh. Oh, hi, Elaine. That's one of my buddies. And Shay. Hey, Shay.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait for your next book. And then Shay, yes.
Yep. Those are two of my good buddies. So I'm glad that they took time to come see us tonight.
I love that story, though. Tell us about where the inspiration from that came.
It's funny because I've always been interested in Iceland, the country, and so and I did some research on it, and it is just beautiful and it's just gorgeous. And so I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if a character came from there or lived there? And it's funny because a lot of times when we think about where books take place, like New York City or Los Angeles or wherever, that kind of thing, but it's like, how many characters do you know came from Iceland? It's so I was like, this would be kind of cool. And so it was a natural fit for me for what the story that I wanted to portray. And Catherine's parents are from Iceland, and so that's where the Iceland tie-in comes in. So that's where kind of where I got it from. But so I was thinking, the other thing, we talked about writing letters and what that is like. What would it be like to fall in love with somebody and then get on an airplane and go halfway around the world to see this person? I mean, what would you feel like? I'm sure you'd be nervous. There would be anticipation, especially if you've never seen them before. You've never spoken to them on the phone. You don't know, you haven't seen any pictures. You know nothing about them except the words on the paper. So it was kind of like an old school way of, how people used to fall in love. They would actually write letters and put stamps on letters, and they would address them. And one of the points in the book that I made is that when Mark is reading the letter, it's like he's just so enthralled with her, and just kind of has this. It's a different kind of emotion that not everybody has these days, because who falls in love with letters? It's all social media and pictures and media and that kind of thing. And I think if I remember correctly, in one of them, he like takes his finger and he traces his finger over the words, thinking, Catherine, touched this paper. She had it in her hand. She folded it up, and it's like, wow, what's the rest of her like? And the title of the book, The Redhead and the Fountain Pens. So both of them write with fountain pens. And so I wanted to give it an even more of an old school feel to it. So he has fountain pens, she's got fountain pens. And so that's kind of a connection, one of the many connections that they have together. So it kind of brings them together. So, yeah.
I love that because my dad was in the military. That generation, of course, everybody served.
Uh-huh.
And since my mom's passing early last year, we came across all the letters that they wrote
Oh,
when my
wow.
dad was in the service for 4 years, and they were separated back and forth. And so we have, it's a box with all the letters wrapped in ribbon
Oh,
for that particular
oh.
year.
Oh, Gigi, gosh, I love that. You know what? That should be your next book. You would definitely outdo the fountain pen in that, because you would have the actual letters that you could pull from. That is a beautiful story. It's funny you mentioned that, because Mark's kind of his confidant, in addition to F. Scott Fitzgerald, is the owner of the bookstore, Scarlett McKeegan, and you had posted one of the excerpts on your Instagram page.
Yep.
Well, it's the same kind of thing where she wrote letters to her husband, who was in the military, and so he was overseas, and every day she would go to the mailbox and there'd be a letter inside, and one day she went to the mailbox, there was not a letter, and then she knew something bad had happened. And so but that's one of the side stories. But when you had mentioned that story about your parents, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so I think you would definitely identify with that in there. So.
Well, and you see that. So you see the old photos where you did have those that are in the trenches, the soldiers, and they're over there writing letters to home. And you get to thinking, like, people can't text you nowadays, so they can't call you, but then you have soldiers in trenches writing letters to loved
Yeah.
ones.
Exactly. Bombs are going off over your head and machine gun fire and all that, and it's like still they found time to write.
The
So yeah.
worst of humanity is happening around you.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you still cling to the hope of, a better life back home.
Yeah. And coming back to see the ones that you've left behind, and that hopefully you can come home and live the rest of your life in peace.
Exactly. So I love that story. Yeah, it does have a tie to my own.
Yeah. So what was your second question?
Oh, I was asking, where did the inspiration from
Oh,
that
okay.
come from?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, like I was saying, I think just in this day and age of social media, of course, that's all everybody's doing. So I'm like, I want to write a story that's not about social media. That's something that's different, something that kind of gets you thinking. It's like, wow, and especially for the younger generation, what was it like to write letters? What was it like to like, oh gosh, I gotta buy stamps.
Okay,
What was it like to go out to the mailbox and
I'll
say,
tell you
okay, I
this.
gotta.
My children go to classical education, but here in Texas, they don't go to public school. Public schools in Texas, they don't teach cursive anymore.
Oh wow.
So how
Wow.
the children will, nowadays will buy, like have a mortgage and sign their name. They don't know how to sign their name. When we went to the DMV the other day, my son knows how to sign his name, and so he was trying to read her cursive. They can't read cursive. They can't write cursive. And so it's a lost art. When I've come across my mom's papers, of course, I can read all of hers. And my daughter's like, what is this?
Yeah. But isn't it cool though? Because you kind of feel like you're in a secret, like a code, kind of thing. It's like only I could read this. My kids can't read, so I've got this,
I'll do you one better. The National Archives
Oh,
put out a post or like a call to action. They need people to read cursive because
wow.
that's kind of how advanced we've moved on from it. So the National Archive needs people that can read it and then translate it into, and then type up the notes and everything.
Yeah.
I thought, how are we so far away from cursive?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess when I was in college, and this was like 40 years ago, that's probably the last time I had to write in cursive. So yeah, I mean, I can still do it, but wow. I never even thought about that.
So I'll tell you my
Yeah,
secret.
yeah.
I used to be a CAO in business, and people, I don't, you said at the board table, I would write everything in cursive because nobody can read it. When someone's shoulder surfing, they can't read cursive as well as they could do print.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I still write in cursive all the time, all
I
the
like
time.
that. I like that. That's
That's
cool.
neat.
That's cool.
So
Yeah.
you have a new book coming out
I
this spring.
I do. Yes, it's going to be in the spring, and the tentative title right now is The Redhead and the Frozen Four. And the Frozen Four
Like four, one, two, three,
is
four.
Yep, Frozen Four. Yeah. So the Frozen Four is the end of the in college hockey. That is like the Final Four in basketball, but it's hockey, so it's the Frozen. They call it the Frozen Four, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So the story is Molly McNamara is the women's hockey coach at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, and so she's going through a tough time where her father was the coach. She played for her father. When her father retired, he left the team to her, and basically she took over for him. So she's kind of had a couple of tough seasons. When she was a player, they almost won the national championship, so that stuck in her mind. It's like, man, we were so close to winning it. I wish my dad, we could have won it for him, and all that. So that's kind of stuck with her. So her assistant coach, Dax Harrington is his name, and so they have a little bit of a miscommunication, and he ends up leaving Dartmouth and taking another job. And so he thinks, well, she doesn't need me anymore. She's got her hockey. I'm just a distraction. They didn't win the national championship again this year, so it's got to be me. So it's best that I probably leave. So she goes off on her vacation after the season's over, and turns her phone off, doesn't look at her email. And so Dax is trying to get in touch with her and say, look, I'm sorry I've done this to you. I'm a distraction. I'm leaving. Just call me. Just please, whatever you need to do, just call me so we can talk this out. Mm-hmm. He never hears from her, so he thinks, oh, well, she doesn't want to talk to me. I can take the hint. So he leaves. When she gets back, that's when she finds out that, well, one, she's in love with him. That's when she figures it out. And then two, it's like, oh my God, he tried to get in touch with me, but he's taking another job. So, okay, fine, just go. I don't need you. And so they're apart for 3 years. So he's got ties to Dartmouth because he played hockey at Dartmouth as well. So he comes back. He finds out that the president of the school calls him and says, hey, I'm getting ready to fire our hockey coach. And he's like, oh, okay. Would you like to be the athletic director? Because I need somebody to come in and basically fire her, do the dirty work for me. So he's like, well, I'll take the job, but let me see if I can turn things around a little bit here. So he comes back to Dartmouth, and Gigi, it is a complete enemies, like bitter enemies to lovers romance. So it's very contentious. And of course, she's got red hair and she feels like she's been jilted. So it's like, Oh boy. So yeah, so he comes back and basically he doesn't tell her why he's back. He just says, "Hey, I decided to come back. There's a job open." He doesn't tell her I came back because I'm trying to help you. But what he does is that he does little subtle things. He increases their budget. He updates their locker room. He gives them all this stuff to be competitive and to kind of boost the program and all that. And so finally, she kind of thaws a little bit, and everything is going well. And so they get to the end of the season, and they're going to make the tournament again. And so I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to end this so I don't give it away. But let's just say this: there comes a time when Molly has to kind of decide: do I want to keep doing hockey, and do I want to keep going for the national championship, or do I want Dax? Because Dax knows it's like, if I hang around here, the same thing's going to happen again. So there comes a point where it's like, okay, is Dax going to stay and work this out, or is Molly going to win the national championship, or what? But the other thing that's preventing their happiness is at Dartmouth College, and I'm sure there's colleges all over the country that are like this. You can't have a managerial subordinate relationship. And athletic director, head coach, manager, subordinate. So that plays into it too. It's like, okay, how am I going to get these two together when, it's like, well, she's got her career and she loves what she does, but he's a distraction, but he loves her, but they can't be together because of this. And it's like, okay, well, how am I going to work this? So it's all been written out now. It just needs to be edited, but I'm gonna leave it at that. So it kind of whets everybody's appetite to see how things are gonna turn out. But there's a lot of humor in it, a lot of with a lot of one-liners, a lot of good back and forth together, a lot of good, like I said, a lot of good dialogue. So it's going to be entertaining to read. The other thing that I really liked about writing it is that Molly, there's a freshman that tries out for the team, and she's really small. And so Molly's like, she'll never play a minute for me. I cannot put her on the ice because she's going to get killed out there. So the freshman comes in, and so there's a little bit of a subplot there too, where she kind of wins Molly over, and Molly ends up giving her jersey. Her jersey's been retired by Dartmouth College because she's an All-American, an Olympian, and all that kind of stuff. So they retired her jersey, and so she pulled it out of retirement, and the girl ends up making the team. And she gives it to her. So there's a little bit of like a mentorship. And so at the end of the book, the freshman, the girl, goes back to Molly and says, well, you taught me about how never to give up, and I never gave up, and I made the team and all that. Why are you giving up on Dax? And so it's kind of like the relationship kind of takes a little bit of a turn, kind of comes full circle of it. So you got that as well. So that's another part of the book that I enjoyed writing. But so it's the Redhead and the Frozen Four, and look forward to sometime this spring.
Okay, hockey romance, which is very popular. Are you a hockey fan, or do you have
I
to
am a hockey fan.
research?
Yeah, I am a hockey fan. The Chicago Blackhawks are my favorite hockey team. And they were good a while ago, and now they're really, really bad. So it's tough to be a fan of theirs. But yeah, so I enjoy hockey. It's funny. I used to be a big baseball fan. My first job when I came to Atlanta is I worked with the Braves in public relations.
Wow.
And I've kind of gotten soured on baseball a little bit just because of the free agency and the salaries and just, so hockey's kind of filled that void for me. So yeah, so I'm a hockey fan. And of course, collegiate hockey, especially in the Ivy League, there's so many good schools in the East that I could pull from. And then obviously there's some great schools in the West, Minnesota, Duluth, Denver, and all that. So I had a lot of fun doing research on college hockey, especially women's college hockey, some of the traditions and some of the things. Like, for instance, I found out, and I don't think they do this in the women's game, but in the men's game, Dartmouth and Princeton have a rivalry in hockey where after the first goal, and I think they started doing this, was it 98? I think it was. Well, anyway, when Princeton scored the very first goal in the game, a student threw an orange tennis ball at the Dartmouth goalie. And so it became a tradition to throw tennis balls. So when Princeton came back to Dartmouth for the rematch, the second game of the season, the students came with green tennis balls. And sure enough, when Dartmouth scored, they pelted the ice with tennis balls. So now it's a tradition. And they say it takes like 5-10 minutes to get all the tennis balls cleared off the ice. So it's just fun little anecdotes like that. And so, like I said, I don't think they do it in the women's game, but I think I'm going to put it in just because it's such a fun, cool thing, to do. So, but yeah, so that's
the hockey team that does it with bears. I've seen that.
There is. I've seen that as well.
Bears go to the local children's hospital and children's charities, which is so cute.
It is, and I've seen that too, and I can't remember what team does it, but and it's funny because Gigi, you like you were saying, it's like not just like 5, 10, 20 bears, it's like a stack, it's like a huge stack of bears, so it's really kind of a
Thousands.
cool deal.
I mean, it gets to be when they and it goes on. It's like whoever that team is. It's when they score the first one,
Yeah,
and it shuts it down for just like what, 20,
yeah,
25 minutes, because it is feet deep from the
yes,
rink. It is the neatest thing, and I always get emotional because I think it's just such a beautiful thing to do.
yeah,
But that would be cool if you added that.
yes, it
Not that
would.
I'm telling you how
Well,
to write your book.
hey, I need all the help I can get, Gigi. Any comments are appreciated. Any ideas and suggestions, yes, send them my way because I could use it.
But how cute that all those ladies, they give back to the community, and so all the bears go to like a children's hospital rather than tennis balls. I don't know what you do with all those tennis balls anyway. Donate them to the tennis
Yeah.
club.
Well, what's funny is I've right there, sister. I was thinking about this, and so the assistant coach says to Molly, with all those tennis balls, why don't we gather them up and we'll sell them over to the Dartmouth tennis team at $1 a ball? Shoot, they'll give us gas money so we could take the bus to Princeton or Colgate or Cornell or Yale or wherever our next game is. So yeah, there might be something in there where we could do something with those tennis balls.
We'll just brainstorm your book on here instead.
I love it.
Okay, so you said that you are done. It'll go into editing, and then you'll have it out by this spring.
Yes, I'm hoping April or May. So yeah, so that would be good. And I mean, if I could get it done any sooner, I would. But you know how it is with the book. It's like you get through it, and then it's like you go through it again, or you give it to a beta reader, or you give it to somebody to look at it, and it's like, well, this part here is, so it's like, sometimes books are never done. And it's funny because when I was reading through this book, I was just like praying. It's like, please don't let there be a typo. Please don't let there be like something that's incorrect or whatever. Cause it's like, it's already in print, because you could go back, like sometimes with like some of my other books, I could go, I shudder to read them because I'm thinking, oh my God, this was like 6 years ago. Did I forget to put in an apostrophe? Did I put the same word, so yeah, it's like, I don't know which is worse, going to tell Red that I bounced a check or crashed the car, or going back through one of my books and seeing a typo. Both are pretty scary experiences.
I'm going to say typo. And I mean, as much as we try, I have different editors, I have 3 different alpha readers, I have an ARC team, I have a ton of eyeballs on it. There's there's 6 professionally, and
Yeah,
then how many of ARC readers? And I still come up with a typo or this. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like we just get so blind to our own
yeah,
work. And I
I know.
use those AI softwares. I use Grammarly to
Yeah,
help, it reads it. I use Pro Write Aid. It reads it
yeah,
to try and help, where the commas go. And I'm like, so yes.
yeah. Well, you know what's funny is that we take advice from a lot of people, and it's just and a lot of it is good. We could, where would we be without that? So it's funny because one of my buddies that is on here now, Shay Strager, she's in the fashion industry, and
Mhm.
so she's always telling me, she's like, look, you have to do a book where the heroine is in the fashion industry, because I could give you so many ideas. And I'm like, oh my God, it would be like a gold mine of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a notebook, and I'm just going to say, Shay, start talking, and I'm going to write everything down. That way I'm going to nail it. I won't have any typos. I won't have any like plot holes or anything, because she's going to give me all the information. So, but it's great when you can collaborate with people and say, hey, did you ever think about this? Because like, oh my God, what a great idea. So,
Okay. I could have used her when I wrote my dark romance that came out last April. It's Isla. And so she is a fashion student at Parsons in New York.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I'm
Well, you
about,
know what? I'll be happy to put you in touch with Shay. She's an angel. She's just like, oh my God, what can I do to help you and all that. So if you ever write another book, or if you do a sequel, whatever, contact her, because she will hook you up. She knows the industry. She's been in it forever. She knows everybody. So yeah, that would be, yeah. Next time you do a book like that, that would be who I would call.
oh, she says, I need to read it. Let me tell you, Shay, that book is a dark romance, and it is my darkest and most disturbing. So you would have to go to my website, read all the content warnings because whew, it's not like Ivan's.
It's so funny because I kind of feel like, Gigi, when you and I talk, it's like I have the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, because both our books are so contrasting. Our styles and our genres are so contrasting.
Yeah, I had to switch over. I wrote, the dark romance, and then I wrote the Cougars and Cubs series, and
Yeah.
that's that naughty bit of fun. And
Yes.
then I have another series, Bikers of Boston, which is still that reverse age gap. But after Bikers of Boston, it's going to be back to my dark romance because I'm going to do like a Russian mafia.
Oh, I
Yeah, and
like that.
the players are going to be, it's going to be a Greek mythology retelling into Russian mafia. So,
Okay. Ah,
anywho,
we might have to sell that for lots of rubles. Sorry, that's my best Russian accent. That's all I could come up with.
so I want to ask one more question
Sure.
on the creative side, and then we'll go into like the mechanics of it. But after this book is done. I know you still have to go through the editing, proofreading, formatting, and all that. Have you started the next book, or do you have an idea on what that next book will be?
Yes. The next book is, and it's, I don't know. I don't want to say that I thought this through because I'm not that smart. Trust me. A lot of the stuff that happens, I feel like Kramer from Seinfeld. I fall backwards. Whenever I do have my small successes, it's always, I fall backwards into it. So, but the next book I was thinking about, the tentative title would be The Redhead on Vacation, and it takes place in October.
Okay.
And that would be the perfect time. I like to release books in October. That's my favorite month. And it's nice because, it's like you can curl up by the fire because it starts to get a little cooler. Well, maybe in Texas, not as cool as other places, but you can, the weather's a little cooler, the leaves are falling and all that. I've always been fascinated with, what fascinated with death is in, not as in the dying sense, but what would it be like if death looked like Julianne Moore? Or what if death looked like Deborah Messing? And she came to visit me and she's like, you know what? I have to take you with me. It's my job. And then it's like, well, how about I give you a little tour of everything before you take me? And it's like all those things that we find that kind of like boost our spirits and make us feel alive, like riding roller coasters or skydiving or, that kind of thing. So the main character, uh, it's like let me back up. So death comes to him and it's a she, and she's like, before she comes to him, she's talking to her friend. She's like, you know what? It's so depressing being death. I would have to wear black all the time, and I have to deliver bad news. And so, of course, it's a rom-com. So so we make death a little lighthearted,
Yeah.
not like in your books. I'm guessing, but So she's like, I'm so depressing. I wish I could just get out of these black clothes for a week or whatever. So of course, when she goes to see the guy, he shows her all the cool things about life and kind of brings her back into, okay, I understand this. I'm kind of, and then at the end, it's like, well, does she take him with her, or does she let him live on and keep going on and doing good things for people and showing people how to live, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the idea for the next book. So yeah, that's kind
Okay.
of where I'm going with it.
Ivan, not to compare, but you're not his target audience. But when um, Brad Pitt did Meet Joe Black, we were all enthralled that he was death because death was smoking hot.
You caught me. That's where the inspiration comes from. It's one of my favorite movies. And just
Really well done.
and they throw the father angle into it. And it's funny because just the other day I was thinking about how the two sisters, Claire Forlani and Marcia Gay Harden, and Marcia Gay Harden is the Anthony Hopkins kind of, you can tell he likes Claire Forlani
She's
better.
not the favorite child, even though she tries so
So
hard.
hard, yes. And
Mm-hmm.
so your heart just kind of goes out to her, and
Yeah.
she's like, and as a matter of fact, today I was thinking about the famous quote from that where she says, "Dad, it's okay that you didn't have a favorite, but just so you know, you've always been mine." And it's like,
Exactly. I love
oh
that.
my God, wow. I mean,
That'll rip
just
your heart.
whoa. Yeah. And then the whole thing where, she teaches him about life, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they, and I'm some of the parts to the movie where, you know, he comes to that realization. It's like, you know what, I can't take her with me. I love her too much. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And he ends up walking away with the father, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then Brad Pitt comes back, and he's the guy.
Yep.
And so that's I've always, that was such a great way for them to portray that, and I've always remembered that, and so that's kind of the inspiration for this story.
No, I love it. It was a phenomenal movie, and we were all enthralled. And so, even to this day, I think it's one of the most popular ones out there. But you
Yeah,
know, he's gorgeous, so yeah.
yeah. Well, hey, there you go. You're a captive audience there. But yeah, he is, and I think the look on his face, just that very serious, you know, just kind of, you know, look, it's very mysterious. And I don't, and I can't remember which book I wrote it, but there was a line in one of my books that said something to the effect of, when there's mystery there, that makes the situation even more alluring, because you don't know why this person is causing these feelings within you. So that's the mystery of that whole thing, is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about it, and heck, I might tear up now just thinking about it. But one of my favorite parts of that movie is when Brad Pitt asks Anthony Hopkins, "Tell me what your wife was like," and Anthony Perkins was like, or I'm sorry, Anthony Hopkins, two different actors. Anthony Hopkins says, "Well, why do you want to know that?" Because he knows, it's like, well, you took her away from me once, so why do you want to know about her? And so then he goes. It's funny because then he kind of he dismisses his anger, kind of throws his anger away, and he starts thinking about what was the first time. He's like, what was it like when you first met her? And then he remembers. He's like, well, you know, she was wearing a little blue suit with a white collar and little piping on it. And then it's very subtle, but he just kind of like looks out the window like this. And then when Drew comes in the office and he turns back, he like looks at him, and then he very quickly, you know, it's like, wow, he just, oof, it's a very powerful scene.
Yeah,
You know,
it
you know.
it was really well done. But I feel like anything with Anthony Hopkins he's just incredibly talented.
Yes. Yeah. When they're on the airplane together and he tells Claire Forlani, he's like, well, you know, I can't, you're talking about your fiance, and I can tell there's no feeling there. Where's that whisper of a thrill, you know, when you talk about somebody that you can't live without? And it's very true. It's that when you talk about somebody, it's that feeling that person gives you, you know, and you know it's right.
Well, how old is that movie, and that piece where he's talking to her about love still lives on in social media today? You know, you'll come across a reel or something on the other apps, and it'll be someone has that audio, and they're, you know, going through the course of their life with it.
Absolutely, because no, it's such a true statement, you know, because it's like, well, tell me about Drew. Oh, I love Drew. Yeah, he's great. And it's like, I'm not sensing that in you. And it's a very perceptive thing. And it's great too, because a lot of times, and one of the things, you know, I like about Hemingway is that he'll throw something out there, but he won't tell you what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
just in his words, in your head, it's like, I just got what you said. And that makes it even better, especially in that movie when they start throwing out those lines, and then it's like, now I get what you're saying now. And that, it's like, wow, what, very well written.
If only we could be blessed that our words live on like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, you know, Hemingway and Fitzgerald and all that, it's like, that's another reason why I'm a big fan. It's like, they wrote how I felt decades and decades ago, 50 years, 70 years ago, whatever it was. And it's like, when I read their books, it's like, wow, you knew what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And so that's probably why I feel that connection. And I think that's why a lot of us, when we have a connection to an author or to their books, it's like, you've reached inside and you've grabbed a hold of me. You understand me. You've reached me, you know? And so I think that's part of it.
Well, because the human struggle and emotions are timeless. We
Yes.
always think it's complicated because of social media, or because, you know, we have more distractions now. People struggle. People had heartbreak. They fell in love. There was tragedies. People were taken, you know, by illness or taken too soon. Those are just the human spirit prevailing through. And it's not unique to us or you or me. It's just the fabric of time and space.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a universal thing that it will live on no matter how many generations come or go. You know, no, you're absolutely right.
Exactly. So to switch over to the mechanics, this is what book that you've published. How many have you published
Okay,
now?
so this is book 6. So
So what have you learned? What has changed on your journey from when you started to now?
Yeah. I've been helped out some by, like you were talking about, Grammarly, and there's an app, and it's you're gonna laugh when I tell you this, but it's called the Hemingway app, and I don't know if I thought I told you about this before, but you copy and paste your text in, and it highlights all the adjectives and all the words that can be cut out and all that, and it's like wow, especially like the word that. You can eliminate the word that in your sentences, and it's like one less word, and it makes the sentences flow. So I've learned those kind of things. Pro Writing Aid, Grammarly, and the Hemingway app are what I use to edit my books. And then beta readers, I've found those, and so they've been a big help. And I didn't really have a lot of beta readers when I first started, but it was something that I did research on and found out that a lot of people do that. And I was like, oh my God, I need that. I need somebody else to look at it. Because like, and like a lot of the writers out there know, after a while, you just get so blind to your books and you miss something just really simple. So that's changed. It's funny. I thought that after a while, something that would change is writing out longhand in notebooks and then transferring it to the computer. I still do that, and I need the paper to the pen and all that. But one thing that has helped me is that in Google Docs there's a text voice or a text to voice feature. So because what would happen is I would write it all out of notebooks, and then I would have to type it in, and I'm one of the world's worst and slowest typers. So now I just speak it in, and of course it's not 100% accurate, but it saved me so much time. So that's something that's changed since the first couple books. I've learned as far as formatting goes. The first time I did formatting, I would do it in Microsoft Word, and it was really, really difficult. And so I learned how to do InDesign, Adobe InDesign, and it was much easier. So basically, it's like, because in Word, if you change a sentence, boom, everything, if you're off, everything changes, or this will move over, and you can't, But in InDesign, it's like, okay, I want to put the title at the top of the book. I'm gonna put it right here. There it is. Okay, I want to put this here, and so on. And it has a spell check too, because like I said, I'm the world's worst speller. So if I didn't have spell check, I wouldn't be an author, because nobody would read my books because I'm such a bad speller. So InDesign is something that's kind of been a game changer for me as far as the formatting part. So I don't fear formatting as much as I used to, because now all I have to do is just copy and paste the text from Google Docs and drop it into InDesign, and then I can move it where I need to. One thing that, and I don't know if you run into this, but as far as like the spine part, so you have your text here, but you can't get it too far into the middle, or so you want to try to get it to the side. So in Word, it was real, for me at least. It was difficult to do that for 260 pages, 300 pages, however long my book was. But in InDesign, it's got a little grid system, kind of like Microsoft Word, and you can take the box and you can move it where you need to. So it's like, I know that, okay, this is here. Okay, let me look. Okay, boom, that's where it needs to be. Okay, next page, boom, that's where it needs to be. So that's been a game changer as well. So I don't fear formatting as much as I used to. But Gigi, it's funny, the passion and the desire to put words on paper has still been there. And I wondered about that. It's like, with the books that you write, eventually you're going to say, man, I just don't feel like writing. But it's like a drug. It really is. It's like, okay, you write one. Okay, what's the next one? Okay, I'm writing a paragraph. Okay, what's the next paragraph? The other thing that I want to mention, and hopefully this will be a benefit to you or to the people that are watching, one thing that Hemingway wrote about was, when you're writing good, let's say that you write like late at night or whenever you're writing, and everything's going good, stop when you know that there's more to come. That way, the next morning or the next time that you go to write, you can pick up where you left off, and you know what's going to happen. And then that way you're already in a writing groove, and then you can start to write the next part there. That way that'll help you in case you come into your writing cold, or you get writer's block or whatever, but at least this will keep you kind of in motion. So that's one of the things that I've learned too. It's like, okay, things are going good. I know what's getting ready to happen. I'm at a stopping point. Let me stop here. Then the next morning, let me pick up with, okay, boom, 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 and then I'm already in my writing mood. So, yeah, hopefully that helps.
No, that's very smart, because I know I write until the conclusion of the scene or the conclusion of it, and then I move on. And so the next day I'm just like, okay, what am I writing today? So I do like that
Yeah,
idea.
so hopefully that'll help you. Yeah, it's helped me. So,
Do you think your craft has changed any?
um, I would hope it is. After the sixth book, hopefully my words have become more powerful. The stories are better. The stories will live on inside of people longer. So I hope it is. I don't know. It's one of those where I think it has, just because I've done it for so long. But the real proof in the pudding in that aspect is that if the readers start to say, "Wow, I love this book. I just can't put this book down." That's when you know it's okay. It's gotten better. It's gotten better. One other thing I will tell you, just kind of a funny thing, as far as like talking about books, like on podcasts and stuff. There's one podcast that I did, and I was a little nervous. It was one of my first ones, and so I was drinking bourbon, and I was like, "Well, this will calm my nerves or whatever." So it was about an hour long, like you and I do. And so I tell you, Gigi, by the end of it, I was just like slurring my words. I was just wasting it.
Oh
So now I drink water, and it keeps, so I don't have dry mouth, and I stay sober. But that's another thing. So if you're ever like on a bunch of podcasts and stuff, you get a little nervous, maybe do a little bourbon or do whatever helps you, maybe a little glass of wine at the beginning, maybe a couple sips, but don't go through the whole thing. Because I was just in the mood and just sipping and all
no.
that. And by the end of the night, I
Having a
was
good
like,
time. Yeah.
oh, yeah. So that's another thing. So water when you're doing your podcast, that's another thing I've learned.
So if you were to give advice to new and aspiring authors, because there's many people that have writing a book on their bucket list, what would that advice be?
um, like Hemingway said, the first draft of anything is shit. Okay, don't get discouraged. Have a thick skin. Go into it saying, I'm writing this book. Nothing is going to stop me. I'm not going to get discouraged. The other thing is that when you feel like you have to take a break, go ahead and take a break, put it aside. But in your mind, think, okay, I got to get back to this. I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of people sometimes are afraid to write. They're like, wow, somebody's going to read this and wow, they're going to hate it. It's going to be terrible. You can't think that way. You just got to say, you know what? I'm good enough to do this. I'm going to do this. And the other thing is that kind of like a little bit of a teaser. Let me just say this for first time authors, and you've been there before too. The first time that you open up that box and you see your book in print and you see your name on it and you see the words that you've slaved over for months and months and months, it is a feeling of euphoria. It is so worth it. When you're sitting there and it's like, midnight, and you're just like, oh my God, I can't write another word. I just can't do this, whatever. Think about the payoff. That is like one of the greatest moments in your life. Such a feeling of self-fulfillment. And you've done something that's going to live on forever. Nobody's going to ever be able to take this away from you. It's always going to be on a bookshelf somewhere. If you get it in a library, if you get it into a bookstore, it's there forever. Those words are going to be there forever, just like the guys that we talked about before. So I think that would be my advice. Don't think about the struggle. Think about what's at the end of it, because it's so worth it.
I love that advice because it's so true. I always say you choose to be an author every single day. Every time you sit down, every time you read a review, every time you post something on social media, every time you write, you're choosing. That's like a vote for your identity as an author, and that's hard.
It is. It is. And sometimes, it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people that it's like, oh, yeah, I started writing a novel. Oh, well, how far have you gotten? Well, I've gotten about X amount of pages into it, but, I've just been busy and I haven't gotten. So I think if you really want to be an author, you will be an author. And if and if you don't want to, eventually it's going to find you, and you're going to come to a point where it's like, you know what, I really don't want this. Because if you really want to be an author, you will want it. You will keep writing. You will break through those barriers. And that's okay. And if you do it and it's like, you know what, it's just not me, I'm going to put the book away. That's fine too. But it'll test you. If you really want to be an author, then you'll find out if you can be an author.
Well, to your point, I think a lot of people, they want to publish, but what they find is that they want to be able to write for whatever reason, an outlet.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it has to go public. You can write for
That's
yourself. It can stay private, and that is just as fine as wanting to publish your works and put it out to the world.
Yes. And seeing your book on a bookshelf in your house, I think, to me, when I look at mine, it's sometimes it's just as rewarding as seeing it in Barnes and Noble or seeing it wherever, because it's like, boom, I did that. Nobody's going to ever be able to take that away from me.
Okay, I have a small confession.
Tell me.
I have stopped ordering my books.
You stopped ordering your book?
I have. So I think this latest series, so I published my 11th book. And I I think I stopped ordering after like book 5.
Well, tell me why.
I don't. It's interesting because, like you said, I did need the validation on my bookshelf. But what I like more is I like to go to my website and I like to see them all there because it's a little bit prettier than my bookshelf.
No, I
And
understand. I understand.
so the need for validation has shifted. And
Yeah.
I find that to be a very beautiful gift. I mean, of course, we would want our books in Barnes and Noble where you can walk in and you have your own display table like one of those authors. But what's beautiful is to get to the point where I don't need that to continue to write.
Yeah.
I have people in my DMs telling me that they're looking for this next book. You've had your fans on here telling you how much you enjoy it. And I feel like that is what matters most, to
Yeah.
write stories that move people.
Wow. You know, Gigi, I did not think about that angle before. Wow. I totally agree with you. You are in such a great place right now where it's like you don't even need that validation. And a lot of authors do, and you don't need that. So, man, I applaud you for that. That is such a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
But Ivan, isn't it true? Isn't that the best compliment that you can receive is when someone says, someone DMs you, they comment about your book, just you get feedback that someone else in the world has written the words and invited them, you invited them into a world that they hadn't experienced.
Yes, it is. It is the greatest feeling ever. So wow. So, and you have your fans. So what more do you need? You got your books, you're writing, you have your fans talking to you about your books and stuff. You are set. You will, whenever it's time for you to leave the earth, you will have no regrets. You will never look back and say, wow, what if I would have done this? That's the other thing is that you can walk, from now until whenever and say, you know what, I did what I wanted to do and I'm good. I'm good. I can go now.
You're so sweet. My kids are like, my mom left a legacy of smutty romance.
Hey,
You're
at least you left a
welcome.
legacy.
Tell people where they can find you and then find your books.
Okay. My website is ivanscottbooks.com. And then you can find my books on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. And they're all on there. And and the other thing is, please send me messages, DM me, send me Facebook posts or Facebook messages, because I love talking to the fans and I love just interacting and all that. So, so that's where you can find me.
And what is your handle on Facebook and Instagram?
Author Ivan Scott. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, X or Twitter. And also Goodreads, and YouTube and Pinterest, because I do a Pinterest page. Here's all the pictures and here's all the inspiration for this is what this character looks like and this is what this location looks like and so on. So you're talking about the Brad Pitt thing. So maybe when you go back and see who was who in Fountain Pen, it's like, oh wow, so that's Mark Dawson. Oh okay, that kind of thing. So yeah, and it's author Ivan Scott for those as well.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on here again. And you know that we're going to connect again when you have book 6 out.
Book 7.
Book 7. Okay, this spring.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Book 7. Yeah, because this is 6. My math is sometimes bad too. So this is 3. Yeah, this is 6, and then 7 this spring, and then 8. Well, hopefully we'll get to 8 this fall. So, but yeah, there we go.
Yep. And review number 5.
You got it.
All right. Thanks so much, Ivan.
Thank you, Gigi. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Ciao for now.